Paul Croteau.
Dr. Lawrence, how are you, my friend?
Paul Arulo, baby.
Babaruski.
Man, I've been threatening to have you on Jazz Piano Skills for a long time, dude.
Yes, you have.
And here we are. Why I've wanted you on for so long. Well, first of all, man, I'm just going to brag on you for a little bit. So,
please.
We go way back, dude. We go way back. 1984, North Texas State University.
Correct.
Right?
Correct.
This young stud comes walking into the College of Music. Did you have hair back then, man?
I did have hair back then.
Did you have hair back then?
I had hair.
Okay, you did. Okay.
I swear to God.
And I tell people this all the time, man. I talk about you, and I always say that without question, the greatest sax player I've ever heard in my entire life.
You should run for office with that line of thinking.
No, man, I'm serious, man.
Dude,
there's something about your playing, brother, that I don't know, man. It's unbelievable.
We have the same experiences, lots of things we learn together, and we sync.
Yeah.
Some players just really mesh well together.
Yeah.
And I always enjoy playing with you.
Yeah. So and you as an instrumentalist, it's high time that on Jazz Piano Skills that we have an instrumentalist come on to talk about jazz improvisation.
Sure.
Because piano players have so much to learn from instrumentalists, and oftentimes jazz piano players stay in their own little cubbyhole, listening to other jazz piano players, which is fine, which is great, but I want to enlighten the listeners to you and an instrumentalist and get some golden nuggets about improvisation, the study of jazz, how you went about it, what you love to hear from a jazz pianist when you're playing with them, and so forth. So
I can do that, but I'm a little distracted here, but I wanted to do some proof here that I did have hair at one time.
That's the ball. There you go.
Those are prescription glasses. Those are not shades. But that was in Sue's room. That was a party in Sue's room. Bruce Hall, C212.
Bruce Hall, man. You're taking me back down memory lane now.
I am, and Sue wanted me to make sure I send you her love. And for those watching, awesome. Bob gave me the honor of being part of my wedding party, so it was a great day. But we'll get there.
Yeah, we'll talk about that too. That was awesome, man. So okay.
Yeah, I'm an instrumentalist. I'm a multi-instrumentalist. All the stuff back here you see is real, and I play it. But we did take a class together. My senior year in '88, you, me, and I'm forgetting. Was it Kent Ellingson?
Kent Ellingson.
Took Dan Hurley's graduate improv class together. It was you two killer piano players. It was you two killer pianos and Paul the sax player trying to hack his way through the class. Yeah.
That was awesome. I forgot about that. That was great.
Yeah.
So, hey, all right. So before we get into all the jazz stuff,
sure.
I want you to take time, share with us a little bit about your life. Literally, go back. I want to hear, because I don't know myself. I want to know more about your childhood, how you got into music, playing jazz, how you ended up at North Texas State studying jazz there. So wind back the clock a little bit here and fill us in, man. The microphone is yours.
I hope you got enough storage space, because this could take a while. We're good. So going back in the Wayback Machine, I grew up as an only child in Bloomfield, Connecticut, just on the edge of Blue Hills Avenue outside of Hartford, a nice little suburb of the hood. And my parents were young when they had me in their teenage years. My dad was a saxophone player wannabe. He was also an artist, and he had a fantastic record collection. So I grew up listening to Oscar Peterson, Dave Brubeck, Charlie Parker, Phil Woods, Dexter Gordon, a lot of the jazz organ stuff as well, Jack McDuff, and that was in the house constantly. And then on weekends, he'd throw on WWUH, University of Hartford, the classical music stations. We hear lots of classical coming out of the house, all the regular literature. And then he was also a weightlifter. Not a bodybuilder, but a weightlifter. There's a difference.
Right.
And he had a gym. He worked out in a basement. So during workouts, Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday, he was blaring the pop radio at the time. So Doobie Brothers and Tower of Power and things of that sort. So I grew up in a very musically filled small house. 1,000 square foot house on Forest Lane in Bloomfield, Connecticut back in the day. And my dad said when I was a baby, I used to bounce to the beat when music was on. I just kind of sit there and bounce. I wish I had a good time like I did then. But anyway, I would bounce to the beat, and he was playing music all the time. And fast forward to elementary school, 4th grade. That's the year we learned recorder. And so Miss Stigliano was the music teacher. And we go to recorder class. We had to pay $1 for this little black recorder. And she passed them out. And then they would teach us G, the first note, because your little hands, 3 fingers to hold it. And they taught us G. And then A and B. And so after that little class, 3 blind mice, 3 da 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 da. And so I know those 3 notes. And she gave us the recorders, and then went home. And I noodled, and I came back the next day, and I could play the whole scale, chromatically as well, not just the C scale. And then I found the range. I could find the different ways to make the notes sound half steps. And so I came back the next day playing the full scale on the recorder. And I got in trouble in class because I was bored, so I'd start messing around. Like, I grabbed one of the kids' recorders. I played 2 recorders at the same time with my nose. So I had 2 flutes on my nose playing, harmony, 3 blind mice, or counterpoint, things of that sort.
That's so you, man. Oh, my gosh.
Totally. So I obviously had some kind of useless gift at a young age. And so then we get to 5th grade now. That summer between 4th grade and 5th grade, Dad watched the Carson Show. Best show ever.
Ever.
Tonight,
yes.
Doc Severance's big band, all those badasses.
And always had great guests.
Always had great guests. And then, of course, he grew up on PBS. 4 o'clock was Sesame Street. Because I was a latchkey kid. Both parents worked, so I'd come home and I'd have the place to myself. And so 4 o'clock was Sesame Street for an hour. 5 o'clock was Mr. Rogers, Johnny Costa. Oh my God. And
the White Art Tatum.
White Tatum, as a name given to him by Art Tatum. A lot of folks don't realize that.
That's tremendous.
That's true. And Electric Company was on as well. Zoom was after that, but around music and of course the Charlie Brown Christmas. That just was the foundation of my life. I would love that. And my dad, Carson was on late. He would wake me up if someone cool was on the Carson Show. He'd wake me up to hey, check out. There's I remember.
Oh my God!
Excuse me. I remember Jerry Mulligan was on, and you're watching Jerry Mulligan play, and all these other cats. Big man Clark Terry was always doing mumbles and things like that. Stumped the band. Great memories. And then there was a show where Hal.
Well, Carson was such a big jazz lover, man.
He absolutely was for sure.
He loved jazz, yeah. So, go ahead. I'm sorry.
So they had Hal Linden, Barney Miller from the old detective show, Barney Miller. Well, he was a great Dixieland clarinet player.
Yep,
and he was on the show one time, and he played some Dixieland stuff, and oh my God, that grabbed me as well. And so that was right before the school year started. So I said, I want to play clarinet because of that Dixieland stuff. He had Al Hurt on as well, but Hal Linden's episode caught me. And so we go to school, the first day of school, and I got band on my schedule in 5th grade. And I go to the band, and everybody sits down, and I don't know what to do. And Mr. Lyhip, our band director, says, well, where's your instrument? I'm like, don't you you're to school. Don't you give them to me? He's like, no, we don't do that. You're not playing timpani or tuba, so no, you got to bring your own. And I was stunned. I'm like, oh, man, I don't know what to do. And so I kind of was despondent, went home that day. Dad saw I was kind of bummed. How was band? I'm like, Dad, it didn't work, man. They don't have clarinets. He's like, no, they don't give them to you? Because he didn't know. And I mean, shoot, he was probably 25 at the time. And so my dad said, well, I've got this old saxophone in the closet, literally is what he said. And I said, sure, I'll try that. And it was a Boozy and Hawkes. It's an off-brand Sears catalog saxophone. We called it the Junkaphone. It was a piece of crap, but it was my piece of crap. And I learned on that horn, and I showed talent early on. I remember our Barry sax player, he was in 7th grade, big guy named Wayne. He was playing that boogie woogie. I'm like, what is that? That's cool. And he showed me the riff. That was the first lick I ever stole. I'm like, okay, I'm getting this jazz thing. And I start listening to all these albums that Dad had in the house. And I just started playing the saxophone all the time. It was like my third arm. They couldn't stop me. My next door neighbor, Alice, our houses were such that my bedroom window faced her window, and it was probably 20 feet between the two. And she'd always get mad in the summer when I was practicing with the windows open because she'd always hear it.
Right.
She gives me crap to this day about it. I would practice all the time, and it went from playing by ear, playing along with records, like the Basie Jam records were great. You just buy Basie Jam Volume 11, and that's like 4 tracks, 2 on each side. And so I started playing with those, and then my dad's buddy at work was a jazz fan, got me a Sonny Stitt album. Now I'm going into like junior high school now. A Sonny Stitt album called Only the Blues. Oscar Peterson trio with Roy Eldridge and Sonny Stitt. 4 tracks, 2 on each side. Amazing. That's one of my top 5 Desert Island albums. Taught me how to play the blues. And Sonny's tone is so beautiful on that album. And of course, Oscar being Oscar and Clark and Terry and Roy. It was a fantastic album. So I played along with that. One of them was rhythm changes. One of them was the boogie woogie blues, and 2 were just regular. One was a super slow blues. I want to say in B flat, the good key. And so I played along with records a ton. And then that same guy that got me the Sonny Stitt album got me Super Sax Plays Bird. Mel Flory and that 6 sax section playing all these harmonized charts of Charlie Parker solos. And I got the Omni book. I remember going to Hart School of Music in West Hartford, and they had a little tiny, the music store was probably as big as one of our dorm rooms, this walls of music, and they had an Omni book. So I got the Charlie Parker Omni book and found the solos that didn't have all the double time stuff. And then I found the solos that they played on the Super Sax Plays Bird album, and I play along with that. And then so I've learned about the world of transcriptions. Well, someone wrote this stuff out? And now we start getting into some debates here. Do you play transcriptions? Do you transcribe yourself? To me, I think it's the best of both worlds. Do you do the whole transcription and just get what you want out of it? I go with the latter. Depends on what you're trying to accomplish.
Right.
Then I got a Phil Woods transcription book and went through that, and I just started I got a Joe Pass book, a Tom Harrell book. I started reading transcription books, playing along with the recording, because it's not just the notes, it's the time, it's the feel, it's the pitch, etc.
Yeah, right.
That takes me through junior high school, and then I got Maynard Ferguson Chameleon, and the first solo I actually transcribed was Gospel John, because our junior high school band was doing it, and we had a little jazz band, and so we were doing it, so I transcribed that alto solo in there, and I didn't know the notation well, so I just wrote the notes, and I could read it, and that's all that mattered. And I didn't start taking private lessons until, I want to say, 8th grade. And that's when my dad got me a real horn. I got a Summer Mark 7. Turns out it was kind of a lemon, but I didn't know it was gorgeous. And he spent $2,300 on it. And that was huge for us back then. We didn't have much. But
that's a huge sacrifice. Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
We didn't have much, but I was never wanting. So he backed me 1,000%, as did my mom. And got me a great horn. I started studying with Phil Delibero. Fantastic saxophone. He was a professor at Hart School of Music for a while. I think he came out of UMass. Serious, legit chops. And when we met, it turns out when my teacher said, you need to get a saxophone instructor, and I didn't know who to look for, it turns out that this very, very talented teacher literally lived a half mile down the street from me. No idea. And so I used to walk to lessons. And right away he saw that I had some skills. And so as a classical teacher, I wasn't taking jazz with him, I was taking classical lessons. So for the saxophone players out there that have been trained, there's this famous book called the Furling Etudes book, originally a bunch of etudes for oboe, transcribed for saxophone. And each page has a slow piece in the top half and a faster piece in the bottom. One's for tone, one's for technique. Mm-hmm. And those solos these days are used in high school, all-state, regional type auditions. And a lot of students will practice a whole piece for a month or 2 or a semester. Right. I had to do one of those each week because I had the skills to do it. So I was cranking out classical literature. It was a challenge. It was fun. I was like, give it to me more. Yeah. The faster, the better. I was a North Texas starter kit waiting to happen. Higher, louder, faster. Let's go. So I did really well at those, and then I started doing all-state competitions, all New England competitions. Got into jazz. In junior high school, me and a couple of my friends were asked to play in the high school band because they needed seats filled, and I became lead alto really quickly, and got into solos. I just come home, and my parents be gone. I drop the needle on the vinyl and just play, and I did a lot of that, and got into improvisation. I had a really good band director named John Erskine. I've tried over and over again to find. If anyone watching this Here's a test. If anyone watching this knows how to get in touch with John Erskine in Connecticut, former band director, please reach out. I've tried Google. I'm a tech guy. I know how to search. I can't find the guy. I would love to get in touch with him, and because I haven't talked to him since I graduated. He played a big role. He taught us improvisation, how to record changes, exposed us to great musicians. There was a concert series at Cigna Insurance. Bloomfield, my hometown, is where the headquarters of Cigna Insurance is. And every summer, they had these summer concerts. And I remember my senior year, he managed to get Oscar Peterson to come in. And so I got to set up Oscar's bench and put the water by the piano.
Oh, my gosh.
I mean, it was amazing. And
wow.
It was hot that day. He was, how Oscar, he's playing, 400 BPM, and he's boogie woogie. He grabs that handkerchief and wipes his head while he's still, the boogie woogie's still going, It was amazing. I didn't get to talk to him, but...
so you sat on Oscar Peterson's bench?
I sat on his bench at his piano. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to have to rub your butt next time I see you, man.
Again? Okay. Also saw the big bands. Got in the big bands big time. So I was a typical 80s kid following Maynard. We saw Maynard a bunch of times.
Oh, yeah.
But Maynard, Buddy, Woody, Lionel Hampton, those bands were everywhere.
All the time, yeah.
I mean, it's funny because I look back at some of those concerts, and there were guys that we went to North Texas with, or that were there before us, that were in those bands when I was a kid watching Maynard. I was at concert when Steve Weiss was in the band, but I didn't know him until... Yeah.
It's so funny that you say that, because I went to see Maynard before I went to North Texas. About 2 weeks before I started school at North Texas, I went to see Maynard, and Steve Weiss was the trombonist in the band.
Yep.
So now, fast forward 2 weeks later, I'm in Paris Rutherford's arranging class, and he's taking attendance, right? And he goes, Bob Lawrence. I go, here. And then he goes, Steve Weiss, and the guy next to me says, here. And I go, wait a minute.
What are you doing here?
Yeah, I said, wait, are you Steve Weiss? Wait a minute, Maynard Ferguson? He goes, yeah, I just left the band. I'm coming back to go to grad school,
Yeah, I remember that. I remember that for sure.
Oh, my gosh, so funny. But, that was an awesome time with those bands always playing high school venues all over the place.
Yeah, it was amazing. And I got to perform with Maynard. We were in the Connecticut Valley Youth Wind Ensemble.
Oh, wow.
And we did a joint concert with Maynard's band, and there was this big piece we did for big band and wind ensemble. So while you and I have tons of friends that played with Maynard, I can say I played with Maynard once. I was on the same stage with him, but it was just a high school ensemble with the Maynard band. It was. So I was just listening to lots of music. I was a jazz snob. In the 80s, synth pop became really popular. Punk was there. I also grew up in a largely urban neighborhood. My high school at the time was 2/3 black. I think today Bloomfield High is probably 95% black. I grew up in that urban environment with all that fantastic music and food, and it was such a wonderful mixing pot at the time. So I grew up on hip hop, early rap, James Brown, Stevie Wonder, all the Motown, Stax Records, etc. So that was part of my vibe as well. Had a lot of black influences in my life, and the music was just fantastic. And,
but the depth of I remember, man, in '84. So you were a freshman at North Texas in '84, and you were a force to be reckoned with, man. I mean, no doubt. I mean, because the depth of your understanding of jazz. Think about that for a second, man. At 18 years of age, what you were playing, what you knew, the stuff that you were doing musically, your technique, your sound, your maturity as a jazz player and improviser. I mean, there's just not that many freshmen that walk into a college anywhere with that skill set.
That's really kind of you to say, but man, here's the deal though. When my senior year in high school, I was all state, all New England. There we did it. In being in New England, we would regularly go to the high school competition, jazz competition at Berklee. And the senior year, I was featured on a couple songs, and I did this really slow blues in G, a shuffle thing, and I play a double E. And the crowd, the stadium's full of people. They're screaming. And then I squeeze it up an octave, like Lenny Pickett, that high squeal. They go nuts. Rah! So that filled my ego, and I thought I, was a cat's meow, for lack of a better phrase.
Right.
But the thing is, when we got to North Texas, all the guys and gals were like that.
Yeah, well, that's
all the folks were big fish. So when you get to a school like in North Texas, and going to North Texas in the '80s, or going to Eastman or Miami, that was like playing basketball at Duke or North Carolina in the 80s.
That's no doubt.
That was the place to be.
There's no doubt about that. Absolutely.
There weren't a lot of those schools. I mean, we didn't have, the new school wasn't there. Northern Florida, Rich hadn't done Northern Florida yet. Colorado was. There weren't as many. Now there's a bunch, so the pop it's diluted a bit, but it wasn't that way back then. And when you get there, you had two options. And here's the thing: all the kind words you just said. When I got to North Texas, I didn't make a lab band. So when I left Connecticut, I'm still seeing it. We're in my buddy William Space, Bill Space, his backyard. His dad was superintendent of the school district. We're in his backyard with my good friends from the jazz band. We were grilling tuna steaks and just hanging out. And like our last time as friends together before college. He went to Harvard and I went to North Texas. And we're talking. And they said, "Paul, do you think you're going to make the 1 o'clock?" And I kind of like, man, I got bebop down, and we read really well. I think I've got a shot. And so I had no clue, zero clue. And so when I got there, and we auditioned, and we had Jim Riggs had the music across the stands, and like read this. Oh my God, did a bird poop on that? What is all that stuff there? For the saxophone auditions, they had some lead sheet stuff and a couple of solos, and they had a Cannonball solo transcription book you'd have to read, and those were a nightmare. And so I made a reading band on Barry, because Riggs thought, he's a big guy, he could hold the Barry, so, But let me add how I got to North Texas. I forgot that's the part. Yeah. I told you I could talk for a long time.
I love it, man.
Hey, wake up out there. I'm still here. Oh, God, here we go. I'll get to the music eventually. So why did I go to North Texas? Why did a kid from Connecticut go to North Texas?
Other than it was the greatest jazz school in the world, but okay.
Not knowing that. So I asked my teacher, Phil Delibero, I said, Phil, this is my junior year in high school. I said, I'm obviously, I want to major in music. I want to be a saxophone player. I want to be, I want to tour and do that cool stuff. I want to play with Buddy and Maynard and Woody. And he said, well, there's really 3 places you can go. You want to stay close, you can go to Eastman, upstate in Rochester, New York. Right. You can go to Miami, great school there. Right. Or you can go to this place north of Dallas called North Texas State. I'm like, never heard of it. And I applied to all 3. I got accepted by all 3. So then you look at tuition. Eastman was $12,000 a semester, or $12,000 a year. Miami was $13,000 a year. North Texas was $4,000 a year. So guess where Paul's going? We're going to Texas because it's a third of the cost.
Well, Paul, let me interject here on this. I remember that. It's so funny because you're saying things that is like almost like my childhood. The whole Carson thing, Dad waking you up, all that kind of stuff, and so I was going to go to Eastman and Miami, same schools, right? So I guess we're all looking at the same.
We're old.
We're all looking at the same school, right? So I get the tuition at and I also was looking at New England Conservatory for something.
That was an option for me too.
Yeah,
I think Lynn Klock was a saxophone professor there. Yeah, but I wanted to go to a jazz place.
Yeah, so so the tuition, like you were saying, was ridiculous, and so I get the catalog from North Texas, and it says in the tuition page, out-of-state tuition $40 a credit hour, in-state tuition $4 a credit hour. I picked up the phone. I called the admissions office at North Texas, and I said, "Hey, there's a typo in your catalog."
Excuse me, sir. Sir, there's a mistake, sir. Yes.
I actually did. I said, and she goes, "Oh my gosh, where?" I said, "On the tuition page." She said, "Are you kidding me?" And I said, "No, I'm not kidding you. It's right there." And she goes, "Where?" And she's looking. She goes, "Where is it?" I said, "Right there where it says in-state tuition $4 a credit hour and out-of-state $40 a credit hour." She goes, "No." She goes, "That's right." And I said, "I'm heading to Texas."
Yeah. Yeah. Now, see, the thing is, I'm the first person in my family to go to college, so there's no guidance or suggestions. I wish I had done what you did, because I would have gone to Texas, worked for a year to get in-state tuition.
But I
didn't.
That's what I did.
See, you were smart. That's why you're a PhD and I'm just Paulie. That's why you're a PhD and I'm an MBA. There's a huge difference. But yeah, so I paid out of state. all 4 years. I stayed 4.5 years. So I changed majors from jazz to arranging briefly, then back to jazz studies. But that switch kind of glitched me, and I had to take an extra semester. And that last semester, fall of '88, I got a 1 o'clock scholarship and I got in-state tuition. I'm like, damn, this is cool. I'm paying in-state now.
Yeah.
But yeah, so yeah, I chose North Texas because of finances. We were poor and had nowhere to go, and I paid for college on my own.
If you're going to go to a school because you're poor, what better school to go to and study jazz?
Yep.
Right than that.
There's not a lot going on in Denton. I mean, there's a great scene, but there's not a lot to do outside of that.
That was such a great vibe, though. I remember like where they'd have the meeting at the beginning of the school year with all the jazzers and it wasn't Kenton Hall, it was the Performance Hall or whatever there.
Yeah, the where Dan taught his theory classes and the lecture series would take place.
Yeah, and I remember...
Was it Lyceum?
Yeah, that's it. And I remember he got up, the first meeting I attended, and where all the jazzers are in there, and Dan literally got up and said on the microphone, "Welcome to the Little Apple." Because,
there you go.
Because all the right, I remember that just stuck with me. I thought, how cool is this?
The numbers were staggering. There were around 230 or 240 sax majors there.
Yeah,
I mean that's crazy.
It's ridiculous, right?
It is. So when you get there, me and my buddy, I think I got a shot at. I go, I audition, and then I go to the outside the 1 o'clock out of Kenton Hall, and there's the wall of the paper. Where's the paper? Looking at the bands. 1 o'clock, no, 2 plate threes. There's another sheet over here for the reading band.
You called the office and says, "Hey, there must be a typo.
There's a mistake on here," and I wasn't in alto, and I'm like, I'm not anywhere. And then I look, they put me on freaking Barry. And cool part about that is I got to play the schools. The school had an instrument this time. I got to play their Mark VI Barry for a year. And so I remember looking at the board, and then this guy, this Haas Cartwright kind of looking big dude walks up next to me, and he's looking, and he said, "Hey man, how'd you do? What band you make?" I said, "Yeah, I made a reading band." He's like, "No, dude, that's cool. That's good. And that's a good place. You're gonna learn a lot." And I said, "What'd you make?" He said, "Oh, the 4." And I'm like, "Oh man, that was Chris McGuire." Okay, one of the most humble, nicest cats you'll ever meet,
right?
And one of the best tenor players I've had the pleasure of knowing. Fantastic. Yeah. And Dixieland clarinet. Anyway, yeah. So he was in the 4. And that same week, my roommate situation was strange. When I got into Bruce Hall, I met a guy. We ended up changing roommates, and it worked out good. His name was Dave Pietro. He got to school late. There wasn't a lot of good communication from the Jazz Studies office, so I didn't know about lab band auditions. I didn't know we had to audition for a studio for classical saxophone. I did not know I'd be studying classical saxophone for 4 years. I thought I was done with Phil Delibero in Connecticut. I thought I had to go buy a new Furling etude book because I left mine at home because I didn't know I was going to need it.
Right.
And so Dave Pietro, he gets there late. He actually missed lab band auditions. He didn't know about them. He had a special audition on Saturday before classes start, and then he freaking makes the 1 o'clock. Yeah. He freaking makes the 1 o'clock. And so my roommate for 2 years was Dave Pietro, lead alto player now for Toshiko, and he plays with the Vanguard Orchestra in New York, and he's adjunct professor of jazz at NYU.
Wow.
Fantastic player. He was a roommate for 2 years. A lot of great memories there. So the competition was nuts, and so when you get there, here I am, the big fish in the little pond in New England, thinking I'm going to do good. Well, there's 250 other saxophone players in the same spot, and all the drummers, the piano players, the bass players. And so at that moment in time, you have a choice. I got to really work hard, or I got to change majors.
Right. Or leave.
Some folks didn't. And so I thought right away, I just traveled 1,600 miles. I left my family and my friends and went from Connecticut to Texas.
Yeah.
I got to figure this out. And I busted my butt, and things got better.
Yeah, you did great, man. I said this to Bert Ligon when he was on Jazz Piano Skills, and I think you would agree with this. I said, Bert, North Texas was an amazing experience. I learned so much in the classroom. But I have to be honest, the real education took place in the hallways.
Absolutely.
Right. And he
It was
totally,
your jam sessions down in the lobby of Bruce, or at the Rock Bottom Lounge, or at the library, the club called the Library.
hanging out with everybody, just learning,
in someone's room.
talking. Yes.
The practice modules down underneath the basements of the buildings, or the practice building itself, or in Kenton Hall later, and going to people's recitals and going to. We used to go to. It was $8 for student night at Caravan of Dreams in Fort Worth to go see the greatest names in jazz. Thursday night was student night, $8. Just playing with everybody. Burt Ligon, Burt played piano, I want to say, in the 4 o'clock. Rick Peckham was the director. He now teaches at Berklee guitar. And we did
right.
Bert's
Is he still there?
I think so, yeah.
Wow.
And we did Bert's arrangement of Take Me Out to the Ballpark. It's so swinging. If you can find that, it's really good chart. He wrote that in the band that semester. Yeah, there's just so much great music there. And as Neil Slater, former director of the program, said, there's a sign on the board, every day is an audition. Just because you got in a band didn't mean you're going to stay in that band.
That's right. That's exactly right. Yeah, and and on top of all that, man, we would be remiss not to bring up the Texas pickup, right? I mean, come on.
Burger and fries. My buddy Ken Mullen used to be a waiter there.
Oh,
He's
man.
giving you a free drink. Yeah.
That was the best, man. I used to hang out there all the time.
That place is no longer there. I lived at the apartment complex right behind it. That's not there. They've got soccer fields or something there now.
Yeah, so sad, man. I miss the 80s Denton scene, man. That was a lot of fun. A lot of fun.
The Flying Tomato Pizza place was fantastic on corner of Fry Street. Yeah,
right.
Next to
Fry Street.
Yeah, it was good times. I mean, it was just there were just musicians everywhere and bands forming. And I mean, a lot of folks have heard of Snarky Puppy. That's a North Texas band.
That's
a lot of fantastic musicians there. Yeah. Nora Jones was there. She was a music major.
And every year, right? I mean, every year, great musicians flock to North Texas. Every year.
Still. And if you do the research, so these days careers in music are getting more and more difficult as far as if you're younger and you want to talk about whether you should do it or not. Where can you play? The big bands don't really exist anymore. They're all ghost bands. They're not quite the same. Yeah. But the military jazz bands are solid. The Air Force has the Airmen of Note. You got the Commodores and the Army.
Right.
Those bands are rock solid swinging bands. And I did the math on it a while back. Something like 2/3, like 60 to 70% of all the members in the top military jazz bands are North Texas grads.
Oh yeah,
I mean it's really serious, and
it's hard to watch the credits of a movie or watch it's hard to go anywhere and not find North Texas cats.
They're everywhere, and it's fantastic. I mean, if you like the band Chicago, Ray Herman is the saxophone player in Chicago, the Chicago. He was in the 1 o'clock in the 80s when you and I got there. Yeah. I didn't know him personally. We saw each other now, but he wouldn't know me if he saw me. But he was a 1 o'clock tenor player. He now has one of the greatest saxophone gigs in all of pop music. And then our friend Jeff Coffin, I think, has the best great saxophone gig in pop music. He plays for Dave Matthews Band. That's a band that he lets him blow and stretch as long as he wants to. And Jeff's been with Dave for a long time. So and then you look at Greg and Matt Chamberlain, bass and drums. Greg and Matt Bissonette. Matt Chamberlain was the drummer for Edie Brickell.
Right.
But the Bissonette brothers, fantastic. There's so much talent back then.
It was amazing.
And there was a scene in Dallas, the jingle writing scene. Paris was a big part of that. Musicians like Randy Lee on saxophone, Pete Brewer on saxophone.
Oh my gosh!
They were just powerhouses. Still are. They still play. Yeah. There was a great music scene in Dallas. I live in San Antonio now. I miss very much so the Dallas music scene.
Yeah. Well, we want you back, man.
We want you.
We want you back, man.
Let's do it.
Yeah.
I'd like to get back there. I've thought about that. I got a kid in college. Another kid just got a new job, and I want to get back to the Metroplex. I do miss it.
So let's talk a little jazz. Let's talk, here you are an instrumentalist. I wanted you to come on Jazz Piano Skills because I mentioned a lot of time, especially to the group of folks that we get together a master class on Thursday evening, and I mention it in the podcast as well from time to time, how important it is for jazz pianists to listen to instrumentalists. And I know you play piano, man. You're one of those guys that us jazz piano players hate because you blow a great sax and then you put the sax down and then you go over to the piano and you start playing hip changes and walking bass lines. It's like, okay,
that's part of my learning process.
Yeah. We just go like, okay, shut up, And so, talk to us a little bit about what advice would you give a pianist? Because you have piano experience. What advice would you give a pianist wanting to develop their improvisational chops with regards to the benefits of hanging out and listening to great instrumentalists, whether they be saxophone players, trumpet players, trombonists, whatever. Lots
of stuff in that question. I want to tie this back for a second. For the non-piano players listening, the instrumentalists, I taught myself piano because my jazz director at summer camp at Hart School of Music said to my dad as we were leaving, "Your son's really good. He needs to get a piano. You need to get him a piano." And my dad got me a piano. And he referred to this. There's a Dizzy Gillespie interview, I think it was on 60 Minutes, where they asked him, because Dizzy played piano. He played piano on so much Bird's Sides. And he asked why. And Dizzy had a cigar in his mouth. He said, "It's all here in front of you. 88 keys, every note's there. You can see the relationships, etc." And so I started playing piano and learned how to read changes. And so as an instrumentalist, I kind of see the changes kind of like you see a keyboard. You can see the relationships between the imagery of the half steps. Where's the third and the seventh? Where are the color tones? How do I get to them? Double chromatic from below, from above, all that. It's there. So instrumentalists, I encourage you to learn piano. You can get a cheap keyboard for $100 these days.
Yeah, because it visually makes sense, right?
Yeah,
it visually makes sense. A half
not
step
the fretboard. The fretboard's stupid. The piano octave, fifth. You can see it.
You can see it. Correct.
And then I got into Dan Hurley's jazz voicings from his jazz theory book. 379, 369, 735, 736. I still use those voicings to this day.
Those are classic 3-note shells. I mean, those are you can't go wrong.
I use them all the time.
Yeah,
I write music all the time for TV and film, and when I do jazz stuff, that's there all the time. Now I do more, but yeah. So as pianists, lots of different parts of that question. Like you heard me talking about playing along with the musicians that when I was younger, you're never too old to start. Play along with records. Put your headphones on. I mean, I had to drop a needle to go back and forth to go back to the solo again. I couldn't just hit pause or on a computer or something like that. You kids today.
They got the looper, they could just
the looper, you could slow it down without changing the pitch. Come on, man, that's cheating. Transcribing solo. I mean, I know you transcribe Oscar, and if you could slow it down half tempo now, you need to. So number one is play.
Dude, Paul, I cheated, man. Back in the '80s, I bought that Marantz tape deck. Remember the Marantz deck that you could?
I do remember that. Yep.
You could have the switch where you can cut it in half. Well, yeah,
you could. That's right. You could for sure.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. I remember that damn Marantz thing. There were a few of those at school.
Yeah.
But play along with the recordings or the music you like. Generally, you will play the music that you grew up listening to.
Right.
So if you haven't ever listened to jazz until as an adult, you got a little bit more of a challenge than the average person. I grew up around jazz and around classical and around rock, so I had a lot of stuff. But you can just immerse yourself in the music and play along with the recordings and don't just go for the notes, but go for the feel.
Yes.
It's all about time. Time is so important. Wynton Marsalis talks about that all the time. Time is important. Breathing is important. I was talking to somebody the other day about this. There's a fantastic blues guitar solo. No, I was watching a video of Tina Guo. She's the cellist for Hans Zimmer. All the famous themes, Gladiator's theme and Wonder Woman and all the Marvel movies. She's a fantastic cello player. And I was watching her. She's doing a duet with herself, like a Bach cello thing. And you see her play, but even though it's not a wind instrument, you could see her breathe between the phrases.
Yeah.
Watch Oscar play, and before he starts with those killer runs, he's like, so you gotta breathe.
Well, breathing creates space.
It does.
It creates space.
You listen to me, and I'm a double-time bebop talker. I never stop. I keep on talking like this. Blah, 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 blah. You don't play like that. We paused. I paused to breathe. You've got to. You're singing whether it's a piano, even a drum, or whatever, a violin or saxophone, or trumpet. You're singing. And so play your melody as though you're breathing it. One of the things I do, I mentor some people on how to compose music for television and how to get realistic sounding strings and winds, etc., horns. And I'm like, guys, try singing what you just played. Play it back, now try singing along. You left no place for a real musician to breathe. You've got to breathe. Yeah. So phrasing is incredibly important. Playing time, playing along with folks, phrase, and keep it simple. And don't think, a lot of folks will think about every note or a part of the measure. Think more phrases. We don't speak in letters, we speak in words and phrases. So don't think note to note. You're just going to make your brain explode.
Yeah, it's funny. I took a chart into the 1 o'clock lab band that I wrote, and I can't remember. You probably remember the dude. I can't remember his name. A red-headed alto sax player. In the
Pat Ballinger. Yep.
There you go. He was from like Minnesota, Minneapolis.
Yeah.
Wasn't he from like Minneapolis area or something like that?
Killer player.
Unbelievable, right? So I take a chart in, and this is when I really realized that, wait a minute, I have to stop thinking like a piano player, because I wrote all these lines out. The sax parts were written like they were piano lines. They were like what a piano player would play, right?
Yeah.
And they didn't translate to the sax section. So they get about
That's hard.
Right? So they get about 8/16 measures into the tune, and I, do this, cut it off, and I said, I said, what do you, because I was kind of stunned because it was like really bad. And I said, what do you, sax players, guys, what are you playing? And he says, he looks up, he goes, what you wrote?
Oh. Yeah, Pat could be direct. Yeah.
Yeah, Pat was what you wrote, and I said, okay, well, pass it in because I need to go rewrite.
I need to rewrite this, yeah.
Yeah, because I realized at that time I was thinking like a pianist, and I need to think more like an instrumentalist. And when you start thinking as a pianist, when you start thinking more like an instrumentalist, your playing becomes much more melodic. It becomes much more realistic, like a vocal line, like what you're talking about.
Yeah, you got to think. So, like, I think one of my favorite piano players ever, Keith Jarrett. I think he is so incredibly melodic. He plays like a bebop sax player. He's noodling around with that technique and all that, but he is playing beautiful melodic lines.
Yeah.
He's playing like Tom Harrell or like a Joe Pass or a Charlie Parker. He thinks melodically. He's not thinking arpeggios. And as piano players, I think a lot of y'all will sit back on arpeggios because you've practiced them so much and they're easy to do. Don't think of chords. Think of color tones and target notes instead.
Yes.
Think melodically.
Yeah. It's you mentioned earlier transcriptions, and I love that you mentioned something. I'm just going to go back to this because you said it so quickly. I want to expound upon it. You said there's the debate between whether you transcribe the whole solo or take snippets of the solo. And you said I prefer the latter, taking snippets, and I do too, right? I like to if I hear something I like, I go I'm going to transcribe that. I don't need the whole solo.
Yeah.
I need that, right? Or I like to take transcriptions of instrumentalists like Chet Baker, and take a solo of his, and I will literally circle like.
Yes, I was just going to say that.
I will circle like little ideas that he plays that I like. Then I'll understand that idea, and then correct me if I'm wrong, but I take that idea then and start using it as a launch pad to start develop my own kind of embellishment to that concept, and I move it around in different keys, and that's how I develop vocabulary.
You're developing vocabulary. You have to, like my Omni book, my Charlie Parker book, I had all sorts of circles of this, something that just turned my ear. Oh my God, why does that sound so good? So I'd circle it in pencil and then play it, and I'd figure it out, get my fingers, start slowly to make it work, and then get it up to tempo, and then I'd transpose it the other. I wouldn't do 12 keys. I'm going to swear, being honest, I would do the common keys for a while.
Yeah, like C, E. I always tell students, use the C minor pentatonic scale as your bass. C, E flat, F, G, E flat.
It covers them all pretty much.
Do those keys and you're good.
That's true. Because if you go G major pentatonic, those are all your rock keys.
Yeah,
G, A,
right.
B, D, E. So
So I just use the C minor pentatonic as my structure. Yeah.
That's fantastic. I'm going to steal that, bro.
It's yours,
yeah,
man.
so transcribing licks is cool. Sometimes transcribing a whole chorus to get the shape because you can analyze the phrases. I mean,
that's good.
With Riggs's form and analysis class, you were analyzing the heck out of solos and finding where's the motivic development, and and there are all these terms about how did you approach the seventh, because there's the concept of color tones. Piano players should know this because they're playing chords.
Right.
Soloists should know this because you want to sound good. You know it. You got to know your scales because the scales identify all the notes in the key. What makes the key. This is the Dan Hurley thing. First class, he's like, okay, what notes are important? Because when he taught the 379, 369 voicings, he's like, okay, root, Bass player's got that. Fifth doesn't add anything. He played a C, open fifth, nothing here. Is that major or minor? Don't care. Now if I add an E or an E minor, it's major or minor. If I add the seventh or the B flat or the B, that changes things. The third and the seventh are your magical color tones. Those are the ones that give you the flavor of that chord. Then jazz and theory and harmony, what a song sounds like is the movement of the chord changes and finding tones that are moving from, if you're doing 2-5-1, you've got G minor 7, that F, and then C7 goes to an E, and then you're back to F, and then that E could be your major 7 or go to F as the root, but all those notes are staying just like traditional voicings, keeping the movement minimal in your hands when you're comping. I think that way when I'm playing, what are the color tones in this chord progression that I can just play a riff that circles around this small area, and that will sound really cool because I'm hitting all the color tones. And how you get to those color tones is part of the fun.
Right. So okay. So what was for you? What was shine a little light on what was a typical practice session like for you? What when you went to your bedroom or you went to the practice room at North Texas and you were going to practice? Talk to us about what your approach was and why.
Okay, so there's different things. So there's classical. You're just going through the sections, playing it perfectly, and not going on until that section is done. I had this phrase I said quite a bit. If you're walking through the school and someone sounds amazing in the practice room, they're not practicing, they're playing.
That's right.
Or they're practicing some subtle nuance I'm not hip to yet. A vibrato thing here, a technical thing that I feel. Maybe they're doing a piano riff and they're trying to get the proper fingering. So that's not practice. If they sound good, you're not practicing. Practicing should sound bad. Right. So in the classical space and scales, I mean, the fundamentals I've got to emphasize for everyone. Just like athletes, they're running, they're sprinting, their push-ups, their weights, their strengths, their conditioning. You've got to do your scales and your arpeggios. You've got to do that. Bebop is scales. Arpeggios in classical music everywhere, but that's also jazz. So you've got to have those fundamentals. If you look at a solo, you look at what Oscar does, and you see it's a bebop scale, or it's an arpeggio, a 4-octave arpeggio, and he's doing an augmented seventh, and it resolves this big-ass chord. Those are fundamentals. Scales, arpeggios, and scales, I'm saying major, minor, that means melodic minor and harmonic minor. I don't get into modes. We had to because we learned them at school. Right. I don't think modally, even when it's a modal tune. I don't do that.
I don't either. In fact,
what are the color tones?
In fact, going back to saying something, learning is more in the hallways. I was hanging out in the hallway one day at North Texas, and you were there, and you were talking, and you had actually said, and this was a light bulb moment for me. You had actually said to the group, you said, I don't know anybody who actually, I don't know any player who actually thinks modes. Really? Do you guys know anybody? Yeah, you actually said I don't know anybody that thinks
I could see myself saying that. I don't remember it, but I could see myself saying it.
Right. And I remember thinking, yeah, he's right. I mean, that's like sandbags strapped around your ankles. Really, I mean, do you really need to think that the C dominant scale is the F major scale starting on C?
Who cares if it's super Locrian or whatever? I mean, who I don't think about that.
And Paul, that's why
it can be useful as a vocabulary piece to communicate with your other musicians.
Well, yeah, and I also I explain it this way. I tell students all the time. I go, look, I'm going to teach you modes as an academic explanation of the origin of a sound. To validate why you need to practice this, but the faster that you can play the C dominant scale and think of it as the C dominant scale and not the F major scale starting on C, the better.
Improvisationally, I don't think about modes. So when I'm starting to learn tunes, like I practice with the Abersalts, like a million kids did. And the earlier books they showed, he had the diagram and the color tone was actually. I think that's actually where I picked up the concept of color tones before, because I was in junior high school. So playing along with those things, you could go and try things over and over again. So practicing, knowing the color tones, how to get to them, when to emphasize them, always playing with good time. I had a point to make about the Abersalts, and I completely forgot it because this happens to me.
Well, I think maybe where you're going with this, you mentioned this earlier too, which is really important.
Both. I got it. Go ahead.
The importance of practicing time and the importance of practicing feel and articulation, right? I remember doing a Red Garland transcription, and I believe it was off the Garland of Red. I think it was Foggy Day in London Town.
Yeah.
And he's doing it in F, and I remember the opening of his solo was it's F major chord, and in the line I remember transcribing F-A-C-E, and I went, that can't be it. And then I listened to it again at F-A-C-E. I said, that can't be it. My ears suck. And I listened to it again. It's F-A-C-E. I said, that sounds way too hip for him to be playing the root third, the fifth, and the seventh of the chord, right? But it's that it's that feel, right?
Yep.
It's that feel.
And that one instance. What I was thinking about the Ebersols is when they saw the changes, people, like I said earlier, don't focus on every note or every half measure or even every chord change. Sometimes to make yourself feel more comfortable on a track, look at the chord change and make a bracket over the key center. These four measures are in F. It's a 1, 6, 2, 5, but it's all in F.
Right.
Now, is it the major 6 or the minor 6? If it's the minor 6, we're still good. F is still good. If this is a 1 major 6, major 2, now you got some color tones. That F sharp in the second measure of that 4-measure phrase is going to bring color and make it, oh man, he's nailing the changes. When they say, man, that guy's nailing the changes, it's because they're playing, hey, that F, it's the key of the song, there's an F sharp, that's because it's a third of the major 6.
Right.
And it's a 2, 5, 1, but it's a major 2, major 5, 1. So that B natural in the key of F. Who's playing F sharp and B natural in the key of F? Well, in a 1, 6, 2, 5, it works if they're major turnarounds.
That's right.
So
that's right.
Identify your key centers. People freak out. Giant Steps, there's a video. Hardest song of all time. No. Giant Steps is 2, 5, 1s and 3 keys. That's all Giant Steps is.
Right.
That's it.
Yeah.
So just map it out. And there's some color tones, of course, but life is not as difficult as we want to make it sometimes. So map out the key centers. Know your scales, know your arpeggios, know what color tones are, play in good time, play in tune, listen to the masters, know your key centers.
Yeah,
it's easy.
and like you said, yeah, right. Like you said, right. It seems like the further down the road you get, I think this is the case in any discipline, right?
Mm-hmm.
The further down the road you get in that discipline, the faster you run back to the fundamentals, but the faster you run back to the beginning, right? Because you finally realize, wow, I have to have those, a command of those.
Yeah.
If I'm gonna,
but know your chords. I mean, and do ear training. Listen. Piano players, listen to what the great compers are doing. Listen to why does Red Garland sound different from Bill Evans?
Yeah.
There's so many great videos out there. What does Dave Brubeck sound like? What does Oscar sound like? What's he doing? What makes McCoy? That big fifth slamming in those fourths.
Yeah.
Chick Corea, I mean, talk about time. That guy's got amazing time.
Oh my God.
What are they doing for voices? And there's so many great videos. And nowadays, with YouTube, you got the solo and the transcription rolling right by.
It's unbelievable. It's unbelievable.
It's just crazy, man. So there's no reason not to be good at this stuff.
Yeah.
But yeah, you got to know your theory. Don't be proud that you can't read. I deal with that all the time in the TV music business. I don't know how to read. I'm doing fine. That's great. Yeah, you're an exception. But if you could read, you could do so much more. I think back when you started the school, long ago, you talked about, if you want to take lessons, I could teach you a song, and you could know a song this week. Why don't I teach you to read, and you can know every song? Something along those lines about learn how to read the basics, and the whole world is your oyster.
That's right. Yeah, and speaking of the ear, how important would you say? I think I know the answer to this because I know what I preach here. I'm tell piano players, listen and understand tunes. Listen for root movement. You have to listen for it. Is it going 1, going to a 2? Is it going to 6? Is it going right? So I call it the harmonic DNA of a piece, right? If you don't know, if you can't hear the root movement, then and you're worried about whether it's major, dominant, minor, half diminish, or diminish, I think you kind of got the cart ahead of the horse. You got to know it's 6 first, and then what kind of 6 is it?
Yeah, exactly. So you asked me. I kind of neglected your question earlier about what should piano players be doing behind soloists. Stay the hell out of my way. No, I'm just kidding.
Well, that's I think that's very valid, though, Paul. I think that's very valid.
Less is more. Don't force me to play a change. Follow the changes I'm playing. Now, if the player sucks and they're crashing, you're hammering that third and that seventh. It's a C7, not a minor 7. What was that story you did? It was Rich Madison improv class. Was it the what you missed the augmented fifth or something like that, and you nailed it the second time? What was that story?
We were doing improv, and Rich said, "Let's play. What is this thing called love?" Right? And so it's got that half diminished G minor 7 flat 5, right? And there's a trombone player in the back of the room, and he keeps playing G minor 7, and Rich, in his big voice goes, "Whoa, whoa, whoa!" And he said, "Why do you insist on playing a D natural, landing on a D natural when it's a G half diminished with a D flat?" And the kid goes, well, "I heard it that way." And Rich goes, "Well, then get out." That sounds
like something Joe Jackson would say.
Yeah,
but he wouldn't be in improv class.
Yeah, right. So he goes. So Rich goes, if that's how you're gonna approach it, then he said you're either gonna make a decision to do it right, or you're gonna make a decision to get out. So you pick, right? Yeah. So there's like silence in the room, this really uncomfortable silence. So he said, let's pick it back up, and he points to me to take the next solo. So now I'm like doing octaves on the half.
On the flat fifth?
I'm doing octaves like...
You're nailing it. Look, Rich, I got it. Yeah.
And he looks over and he goes...
Yeah, man. Yeah, man. Rich was great.
Yeah.
It's great, and I love Rich. I mean, he was a great influence on us. He played with Louis Armstrong. He recorded with Louis Armstrong.
I know that.
Yep.
Isn't that amazing?
Yeah, that's a fancy stuff.
That was always fun in those improv classes when that door would fly open. That door would fly open. He'd come down that stairs, and he'd have his euphonium. You'd go like, uh-oh.
Yeah,
we're gonna
learn something today.
We're gonna be playing today.
Yeah, he Rich told a story when he in improv class. He said he talked about playing with Louis Armstrong in the Hot 7 or something like that. He was playing euphonium, and he did his Louis impersonation. And basically he said, "Now we're all going to play this." He talked to the engineer. This is going to be between me and God. You all can come along for the ride if you want. And that's it. That's hearing those stories, man, was great.
Yeah, that's awesome.
But piano players, so behind for me, if I'm playing, and I'm largely thinking jazz, I will play the heck out of funk and soul and rhythm and blues to your no heart's content. I can do a Brecker and Sanborn in a heartbeat. But when I'm just thinking traditional jazz right now, don't force the sax player or the soloist to go where you want. Stay where they are, and they may give you clues. Like if I say we're playing a blues in F, and I start doing something, and then a new chorus comes around, and instead of just playing F for a couple bars, I play F and then E, A, D, G, C minor, F. I throw in a bird blues chain, so you might not catch it the first time, but I'm gonna make eye contact, hopefully, or if not, you're gonna hear that and you're gonna do it at the same time.
Absolutely right.
It's that next chorus, rhythm changes, the monk substitutions, the fourths back and forth off the flat 6. So listen, if the player implies something, you gotta go along with it, but don't force it. There's a famous video of Michael Brecker in North Texas, and I put it out on the internet years ago, and they start playing. It's the first track. I think it's a B-flat blues playing Sunny Moon for 2, and the bass player, the 1 o'clock bass player, has got his Jaco Pastorius fretless bass, and soon as they get out of the head, and then boom, he drops to the sharp 4 on the bass. He's like, "Mike, take it out." I'm like, "Dude, don't let Mike decide when he's going to take it out. Don't just say, 'Hey, Mike, I'm playing bass with Mike Brecker. We're going to take it out in the first chorus.'" That's not your role, man. You are accompanying him, not leading
exactly
him.
Right. Yeah.
Not attacking him. But Mike went for it. He's used to it.
Yeah, I remember when Brecker was at North Texas and playing, and Neil Slater. I was standing backstage next to Neil, and Brecker was taking a solo, and Slater looks at me and goes, "Man, this cat's got his Brecker licks down." And
this guy's got his Brecker licks, yeah.
He goes, "Hey, this guy's got his Brecker licks down, man." And then he looks at me and goes, "Oh, that is Brecker."
That's hysterical. I was friends with Mike. You want to hear a good story?
I know you were. Talk about that for a second.
Yeah, so in the mid-'90s, I went to graduate school at Texas A&M, and '94, fall of '94 I started, and the web was born that year. The first web browser, Netscape, Mozilla,
right.
And I saw this thing happening. This internet. The internet's been around since the '60s, but the web, as we know, with web
right.
browsers and stuff, was born. And I saw this technology was really, really important, and so I decided to build a website when no one really had them. I needed some content, an idea, and I said, well, shoot, there's nothing out here for Michael Brecker yet. I'm talking Yahoo was a gray page with blue words, and then when they upgraded it, we had now tables. You can put things in tables and add images, and that's what I'm talking about. And so I said, I'm going to just use Michael Brecker as a content topic because I love his music, and let's do that. And so I created this web page with albums and discography, some things I knew, and about a week after it went live, I get a phone call on my answer machine. Hey, Paul, this is Michael Brecker. I saw your website online. I'd like to talk to you about that. I'm like, oh, shoot. I mean, take it down or what? And I'm thinking, is somebody, doing a trick on me? But it sounded like Mike. But he left his phone number, so I called. It was at 212 in New York. And so I called him back, and he's like, hello. And I said, Mike, this is Paul Croteau. Hey, Paul. Hey, man, what's going on? We started talking like we're buddies. He's like, man, I really, really dig what you did, man. I want to help you out with that. I've been wanting to do this, but I don't know how to do it. And so this is in, I want to say, summer of '95. And I'm like, yeah, man, I would love that. And, I need photos. I want to talk to you about your setup and all the things that you get asked all the time at gigs. What kind of reed do you use? And blah, blah, blah. But I want to know more. And so he's like, yeah, let's do it, man. And, of course, he had been playing the EWI, the electronic wind instrument, which I have one as well. And so we became friends. I actually became his Mac help desk. He was a Mac user as well. He'd start calling me, hey, Paul, my Mac's doing this weird thing. And so I get phone calls, help desk for Mike. And
that's hilarious.
And so he sent me, I got a lot of his recordings before they were released so I could have them ready for the website. And he was really obsessed with the website being fast. He didn't want to be slow. And so, yeah, we became great friends. And I did that until 2000, so 5-6 years. Then my daughter was born, and then I was busy with the IT world, and I couldn't manage both, so I said, I got to get this back to the record company. And so they took it, and they pretty much destroyed it and made it a brochure site. And then I saw Mike in San Antonio in, I want to say, 03. And he was there with Herbie Hancock, and we crossed paths. That's the first time I actually met him in person after doing his website for 8 years.
Wow.
And it was great. Sue was with me, and we saw him in an elevator, and like, I said, Mike. He's like, yeah, and I'm Paul. Paul! And he gave me a big hug. And he said, Sue! And he gave Sue a big hug.
Oh, that's awesome, man.
We had dinner together, and I said, Mike, I miss doing the work with you. I'm not really digging what Impulse has done with your website. He's like, Paul, I fucking hate that site. It's just a promotion. And I said, well, I've got an idea. I want to do a new website for you, but it's michaelbrecker.com. It's owned by the record company, so let's do iBrecker, because the iPhone, the iPad. So she's like, Paulie, I love it. Let's do it. And so then I did ibrecker.com. That stayed up until he died. Wow. And I got my last email from him about 2 weeks before he died, and that was very, very sad.
Oh,
but he was so cool, forthcoming with information, etc. He introduced me to Dave Sanborn, because I said, I'd like to do a website for Dave. He's like, yeah. So he introduced me to Dave's management. Dave was the exact opposite. He had zero interest in the technology. I told Dave, because Dave was actually more famous, could we say, than Mike was.
Right.
He was on Letterman and all this other fun stuff, and I said, Dave, you could we could sell your CDs online. You could sell autographed posters. He's like, oh man, this is a lot of work. I just want to play. So I was trying to do the e-commerce thing with him, make a little coin for myself as well, but it didn't work out. But
you tried.
Speaking of Mike, let me get this thing here real quick. Here, I just got this in the mail a month or so ago. So they released some of Mike's practice notebooks.
Oh wow!
It's the practice notebooks of Michael Brecker. This is just a sample.
That's fantastic.
And you open it up, and there's just I don't know if it's backwards or not, but it's all these little riffs. I see one I think I can play. That's F-A-B-E. So it's a diminished triad. Play chromatically down over 2 5s, and all these great licks, blah blah blah.
Right.
And I tried playing some, and like they're all absurdly difficult, but they all sound exactly like Mike.
Yes.
So I think I'm going to start a video series of me learning a lick. This is how stupidly hard it is. And he didn't write it out in 12 keys. This is something your students might want. He didn't write all that stuff out. You learn it once, and then he would take it through all 12 keys. Right. But he would practice it like, do the riff, and doing a whole tone scale instead of half steps.
I heard an interview with him where he talked about what you were just talking about earlier. He said that he rarely ever did a full transcription. It was always snippets that he would, I like that, and I'm going to take that.
That's a personality trait. It applies to reading too. There's some folks there's a category of Gallup polls. I think it's Gallup polls has done a study for many years of these personality traits. There's 34 of them. It's called Strengths Finder, and one of the traits of the 34 is learner. And one of the traits of learners is that they get what they need out of something and they move on. If you're reading a business book about how to sell or whatever, you get what you need out of it. I don't need the whole book. I got what I need. Same thing applies to solos. I just wanted that turnaround sounded so amazing. I need that.
I need to know that. Yeah, right.
Exactly.
So, Paul, man, you and I could chat all night.
We could do it in round 2 if you want to get deeper into theory. We spent 35 minutes talking about me. I want to talk about stuff to help your kids.
We're gonna have a round 2. There's no doubt about it. But you know what we got to do now, bro? You know
what's that?
We gotta wrap things up because the Rangers are gonna play Game 1 in the World Series.
Let's go Rangers, baby. Let's go.
Let's go Rangers, right? So who would have ever thunk it, right? Here we go.
I mean, the way they were dominant all year. Houston was up their butt, and then Rangers could have clinched, and they got shut out 1-0 in the last game of the season, and then they go and spank Houston, and then Houston comes back. I just want the umps to be consistent.
That's right.
In the series, they were in the ALCS. They were inconsistent on both sides. Let's lock down that strike zone, guys, and let the players play.
That's exactly right. Paul, I can't thank you enough, man, for coming on Jazz Piano Skills. I know all the listeners are going to love getting to know you, and I can't wait to have you back, and we'll have some very specific jazz skills.
Now we got the bio section done. Let's get into some pedagogy.
There we go. We'll get into some pedagogy. So I want to do this real quick. Ladies and gentlemen, Paul Croteau, listen.
Yeah. I love it. You're high tech, my friend.
Yeah, see?
Look at that. It's great. What a crowd. What a crowd.
All right, man. Paul, thank you so much, man. I can't wait to have you back, and let me know when you're back in Dallas again so we can hang out.
I was in your office just the other day, but you were not there, so I will give you advance notice next time.
I know, brother. Thank you, Paul.
Love you, brother. You take care. We'll talk soon.
Love you too, man. Bye-bye.
Peace.